In her mouth. Are you ready for that? I don't know, was that? Is that for some? Yeah. You said you're doing a game like that too?
The share screen is gone. There it is.
Oh, and they added up with her.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people cut things. I think that's 4 hours.
Yeah. It's a down.
Oh, it's not.
All right, welcome to our study this morning in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16. Beginning with verse 19. And this is the context of Jesus on his way to Jerusalem. He's going through the area of Perea. On this journey, he's been criticizing the Jewish leadership. He's been encouraging his disciples. And here he just told 3 parables on lost things in chapter 15. And now he's moving into the area of stewardship. The first part of the chapter, he told a parable about that we sometimes call the parable of the unjust steward, and seemed to commend a guy that was doing something wrong. We talked about that. If you weren't here, suggest going on to YouTube under Poland Village Baptist Church and find that previous episode. So in the context of all that, and the last few verses before we get to this section, Jesus is pointing out the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. Verse 19, now there was a rich man, and he habitually dressed in purple and fine linen, joyously living in splendor every day. I'm not going to explain everything as we go along here because we already did most of this last week, but if you have a question, if you weren't here and you have a question, or even if you were here, feel free to interrupt. Otherwise, I won't say a lot about this. So here's a rich man, dressed in purple, fine linen. And contrast, verse 20, there's a poor man named Lazarus, who was laid at his gate, covered with sores. Pretty deplorable position. And longing to be fed with, and the word crumbs is not really in the original, be fed with what was falling from the rich man's table. And as I pointed out last week, it was common for rich people to wipe up the crumbs, the things that had accumulated with a piece of bread and just throw it on the floor. And that would be what the rich man was hoping for, basically to eat some of the rich man's garbage. Even the dogs were coming and licking his sores. The rich man's name is significant. His name is Lazarus, which can be translated God my help or God is my helper. Doesn't look like he's getting much help at this point, does it? Verse 22, now the poor man died and was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom. And the rich man also died and was buried. I'll take up Abraham's bosom here in a few minutes. In verse 23, we see the beginning of a description of where they ended up after death. Verse 23, in Hades, he, that is the rich man, lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and saw Abraham far away and Lazarus in his bosom. Basically, that just means by his side or leaning against him. And you can picture the same kind of scene that we have at the Last Supper, where they're laying on their left side and eating, and John is on the right of Jesus, the place of honor, and John is leaning back onto Jesus's chest to talk to him. And so Lazarus has a similar position in relationship to Abraham. So paradise was often pictured in the Old Testament as a banquet. And the New Testament it is too, but at this point, these people, of course, know only the Old Testament. So the rich man is in Hades, being in torment, and saw Abraham far away and Lazarus in his bosom. Verse 24, and he cried out and said, no, wait a second, don't want to do that yet. Trying to see where we stopped last time. I guess let's pause for a second and consider what was it that caused them to each go to their places? What caused the rich man to go to a place of torment in Hades and Lazarus to go to Abraham's bosom, a place with paradise? What was it that was it the wealth of the rich man that condemned him? Was it the poverty of Lazarus that saved him? You might think that at first glance, but what is it? Yeah, go ahead, Sheila.
Trusting in wealth instead of trusting in God.
Yeah, that seems to be the issue here. That as someone has said, the rich man, the sin of the rich man was contentment without God. And that this is a direct slam at the Pharisees as well, because they thought that their wealth indicated their approval by God. And Jesus is pointing out in this parable that that is not the case, that it can be the opposite, that your contentment with your wealth drives you away from God. Whereas Lazarus, and I think this is why Jesus gives a name here. Maybe this would be a good place to consider even before we go through the whole thing, because there's a lot of discussion every time you come to this passage. Is this a parable or is it a real life story? In fact, Beth found someplace online that they were debating this. So is this a parable or a real life story? What would you say, Jim?
I would say it's a real life story because there was a rich man,
Mm-hmm.
not just a rich person or something like that. It didn't give a name, but it does, it says a rich man.
Parables usually don't need them.
All right, but
Lazarus.
if we go back to verse 1 of chapter 16, it says there was a rich man who had a manager. So if saying that there was a person indicates that it's a real life story, then none of the parables are strictly not real life. Okay, that's a different argument than what Jim was making, though. Let's take one thing at a time here.
Yeah.
So just saying that there was a rich man would be consistent with what he does in other parables. Okay, now the next argument is this parables don't name names, unless this is the exception. So that might lead you to believe that this was a real event because it names a person. It's a real person, Lazarus. Now, when Beth asked me after she read stuff online about this, asked me whether it was a parable or a real life story. Do you remember what I said?
You didn't know.
No, that's not what I said. Maybe that's what you hoped I would say. She likes it when I say I don't know.
Say I'm wrong.
Yeah.
They're out.
What I,
It doesn't happen very often.
and I don't know the exact words, but what I said was, it doesn't matter.
No, that's right.
Why? Why doesn't it matter?
It's the story that counts. It's the illustration.
The story, even if it's not a real life story, is still true from the standpoint that it's teaching truth. Now, the name of Lazarus being given, I think I would posit this as a possibility at least. If there's no reason for giving him a name, then I would say I would lean toward the idea it's a real life story, that a real person, because he's naming the person. But I think there's a reason why Jesus gives him a name, even if it's just a parable. And that is, without the name, we might not understand that it's not the wealth that condemns the rich man and not the poverty that brings the poor man into paradise, because his name indicates his character. God is my helper. God is my helper. So we see in contrast right away the difference between Lazarus and the rich man, because the rich man's helper was his wealth. And we can see that by his attitude toward Lazarus as he walked by him every day, because Jesus is careful to tell us that Lazarus was sitting at the rich man's gate. He wasn't somewhere in town, but he was right where the rich man had to pass by. And his attitude indicates that he does not know God, that God is not a part of his life. Okay, does that make sense? Any further comments on whether it's a parable or a real story? I know so often I give you answers like either way or both or whatever. John?
Can I say one word?
Yeah,
Selfishness.
say that again.
The rich man is selfish.
Selfishness, yes. Yeah. We see that by the description, by what he does. He lives in splendor, joyous splendor every day.
Doesn't say that even threw the crumbs to the poor man. You know, he could have said here.
The fact that Lazarus is hoping for it maybe indicate that he never got it.
Yeah.
Hey, any other comments?
Yeah, and I think one issue that I've seen with people trying to use this passage is they don't look at it in the context, right, of attacks on the Pharisees and, verse 10 through 13 of the same chapter. They just treat everything independent, where it's talking about you can't serve both God and money.
Right. So it comes right on the heels of that.
Right on the heels of that.
Yep. Yeah, good point. I should have gone back to that. You're right. Now, I want to make one clarification, and that is I have seen where people, once they latch on to the idea that this is a parable, use it to discredit some of the details as therefore not being true. Not being true to life. It's just something made up for a point and therefore does not reflect reality. You understand what I'm saying? Even if it is a parable, just like most of the other parables, it does reflect reality. So I'm sure there were rich men who had unjust managers, and there all the parables, there were sons who left their family, lost sons, and so on. So because it is a parable doesn't mean that it's not reflective of the reality of what Hades is. All right, so the next question is, where are they? Where are they? In this parable, we find a reference to, I suppose some of your translations probably say hell. Anybody's translation say he was in hell?
Yeah.
New American Standard gives us an alliteration, a transliteration of the Greek word, and just says Hades, which I much prefer because especially the King James Version translates, I think, at least 3 different Greek words as hell. And they're 3 different meanings. But if all you read is the King James Version, then you're going to think that they're all the same place because they're all called hell. And it's not. So I'm not going to go into all that. But the Greek word is Hades here. And I find a lot of confusion about this, even among well-known Bible teachers and pastors over the place of Hades. In recent years, I've heard at least a handful of respected preachers misunderstanding this. And I probably shouldn't name names, but one who is no longer with us, who had started and headed up a reformed organization that has a wonderful app on the phone called RefNet. He was confused about this. Another guy who is the pastor of one of the largest Southern Baptist churches in America, graduate of Dallas Theological Seminary, a respected Bible teacher, also heard him say some things indicating that he was confused about this. I don't think it's too confusing, especially if you delve into what historians like Josephus and Greek writers had to say. And the importance of the question can be seen in understanding what is meant also in the Apostles' Creed, where it says of Jesus, he descended into hell. Now, when we do the Apostles' Creed here, Brian has selected a more modern rendition of it, and I can't remember how it says it there, but to avoid all the people pricking up and saying, what, Jesus went to hell? Because they don't understand that the King James Version uses hell for a lot of different places and don't know what this means. In the Greek of the Apostles' Creed, it's he descended into Hades. So what does that mean? Well, there is a place that in the Old Testament is called Sheol. In the New Testament, the Greek word is Hades, and it is the place of the dead. It's where dead people went after death. When their spirit leaves their body, this is where they would go. It is what might be called a temporary holding tank. And you can see in this diagram that Hades, or Sheol, is divided into two parts. There is an area of comfort, and there is an area of torment. The area of torment and the area of comfort are both in the realm of Hades. There's maybe a better diagram, especially as we look into what's happening next. So there's paradise, sometimes called Abraham's bosom. There is Tartarus is another word for the place that was prepared for the angels, the evil angels. And there's a place of torment for those that are unsaved. And there's a great gulf between them. They're in the same general location called Hades, but they cannot go from one area to the other. And so that takes us to verses 24 to 31. Well, any questions so far about this? Is this new? Or have you heard this before? Yeah, Larry?
This is where the Catholics get, what do you call?
Purgatory?
Yeah.
Actually, they get it out of just their own, they get more out of Greek mythology. Now, this is similar to what the Greeks said about, because they have Hades, they have a place of the dead. But the Roman Catholic Church gets the idea of purgatory because it goes back to their whole system of work salvation. Recognizing that you cannot, first of all, believing that a person's works are what ultimately saves them, and realizing that most people's works are not going to be enough to save them. So their out is they go to purgatory, which is a place of torment, but it's to burn your sins off, purge, to make clean. So purgatory is not Hades, I don't think, in the way they think. Purgatory is a place where your sins are burned off so that you can eventually escape from Hades, or from purgatory, and go to heaven. It might take you millions of years, unless people say masses for you and help, pay to get your way out, or buy indulgences as they were doing in the 1500s and since. So I'm not sure, Larry, to be honest about your question, that they get the idea of purgatory from this. I think they came at it at another direction, without any regard to what it says in Scripture. That's my guess on that anyway, without researching it. Any other questions?
So you're saying Sheol and Hades are the same?
Yes, synonymous. One's a Hebrew word, one's a Greek word.
Okay.
The note I have in my sort of out from Arthur is that, yeah, they translated Sheol as Hades to like the same thing, but in the Old Testament, it could refer to both paradise or
Mhm.
The place of torment.
Yeah,
But in the New Testament, when Jesus uses the word, the word Hades referring to place of torment.
yes, in
But-
this, in here, because in here it does say that the rich man awoke in Hades, or lifted up his eyes in Hades. And Lazarus was in Abraham's bosom or paradise. So that, I think your distinction is probably correct there. That even though Hades became synonymous with Sheol in translation, for example, in the Septuagint, whenever Sheol was the Old Testament, the Hebrew word, Hades was the Greek word they used for that. But in what Jesus is saying here, he does seem to distinguish Hades as a place of torment and Abraham's bosom as the place of paradise. But they all are in the same
Same.
locality.
Yeah.
Which you could call Hades, but you don't have to. Yeah.
Something that really, I don't know, it doesn't need said in this group, but this is all before Jesus died for our sins. This is all pre,
Mhm. Yes,
just want to make.
we,
Yeah, that-
to jump ahead, we don't go there anymore,
No.
not to that locality. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, let's go to the problems, verses 24 to 26. Verse 24, and he cried out, the rich man, and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Now, this may indeed be the first real prayer this man ever uttered. And it was not to God. It was to Abraham. Interesting, huh? But why does he cry out, Father Abraham? But why pick Abraham?
As you can see it there.
He could see him.
And he's, the patriarch. Right?
He's the patriarch. He's the one who is his ancestor. So he's claiming his descendancy from Abraham
Yeah.
as a reason for Abraham to listen to him. And I would say, I suggest the second reason, Abraham seems to be in charge over there on the other side. Lazarus is leaning against him. Abraham's the central figure. The Jews had a tradition that Abraham sat at the gates of Sheol to make sure that no Jews went into torment. And so Abraham's in charge. He's guarding the gates, and the rich man is thinking there must be some mistake. And Abraham's position is similar to what people think about St. Peter today. St. Peter's at the gates, there's so many jokes and stories about people coming to the gates of heaven, and St. Peter's there. And, I don't want to get sidetracked into telling jokes, but it's kind of the same situation. And notice he says, have mercy on me. Does he recognize that he needs mercy? Yeah. Yeah. Does he think he deserves mercy? Maybe.
He's a good
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I think,
Deserves
yeah.
it.
Well, I think the next phrase shows he hasn't completely changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go on to that. That will use a segue. What did the rich man ask of Abraham? Not only for mercy, but specifically what? And send Lazarus so he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool off my tongue. So what does the statement request send Lazarus indicate?
He's above.
Rich man's above Lazarus.
Yeah, he's still thinking about himself.
Yeah, and he's thinking about him, and he still views Lazarus as a slave
Yeah.
to do his bidding. send Lazarus. So this also indicates that he knows who Lazarus is, knows his name, and yet never helped him.
He wants Lazarus to help him.
But he wants Lazarus to help him. Yeah. There's an interesting word here that, especially as Baptists, we need to take a moment. NASB says that he may dip the tip of his finger. Any other words used in your translations? I'll say dip. Oh, okay. What's it mean to dip?
Like the Catholics do in holy water.
Yeah, you
Do-
can also, yeah.
Do you mean you just
same
touch
word
it?
as baptize.
Yeah, it's the word bapto,
Yeah.
which is the root of baptizo. So if you dip your finger, you put your finger down in it. Not, you don't sprinkle a little water on top of it. You don't just touch the water. You dip your finger. Okay, so enough said about that. So did the rich man's attitude toward Lazarus change? Well, you've kind of indicated that you don't believe it had. And so he still regards Lazarus as beneath him. Now, contrast this infinitely slight service of dipping finger and getting a drop of water compared to that which he was accustomed. Huge difference, right? In his life, he could have called upon multitudes of slaves to bring him gallons of wine or water, whatever he wanted. But now he's in such agony and recognizes that he deserves to be there, apparently, so that he just wants a drop for a momentary release from his pain. Now, interesting if we compare what he says here back to verse 21. So the rich man is longing for a drop of water to cool off his tongue. And back in 21, Lazarus was longing for just a few crumbs, just some garbage from the rich man's table. At the end of verse 25, we see what we've said before. I am in agony in this flame. So this is obviously a place of torment. Oh, there's the word bapto. Okay, verse 25. But Abraham said, Child, remember that during your life you received your good things. First of all, the word child. What do we remember about the word child? We've seen that word before, I believe.
It's a son.
Usually, it's usually used of a son, but it has a different connotation than using the word son. When one uses the word child, it's indicating tenderness and compassion. In fact, I think, isn't that the word that the father used for the lost son? I know we've seen it recently. Is that where it is? Oh, yeah, it went to the older son.
Oh, yeah, with the old man, yeah.
Yeah. Verse 31. Now, NASB says son, but I think I remember that as being the word child. Anybody have a note on that? So this idea of tenderness and compassion. So Abraham is not antagonistic toward the rich man. He has compassion for him. But notice he doesn't deny the physical relationship by heredity, by calling him child. So they are related physically. They're just simply not related spiritually. And he said, you received your good things. What were the good things that the rich man received? All the riches, wealth,
The good food.
food, clothing.
Probably his esteem too.
Yeah.
So all the things associated with success in a temporal world, in a materialistic world. Something came to my mind that I just want to insert here is because it might mean something to someone. I heard, are you familiar with the country singer John Rich?
Yeah.
He was with, what was it, Big and Rich? Was that the name of the group he was with? Apparently, recently, some last few years, he has realized that all the success that he desired, all the things that he wanted have come to him. And looking back, he's saying it basically was empty. And so he came up, maybe he's probably not the first one to say this, but he's the first one I remember saying it. He said he realized that the important thing was not success, but significance. Not success, but significance. I thought that was pretty cool. And so he's determined to use his position as a platform to proclaim Christ. Well, this rich man was interested in success, not significance. And Abraham says, you got good stuff, and likewise Lazarus, bad things. Lazarus had a bad time of it. But now he is being comforted here. And you are in agony. So once again, as we look at paradise here, we see Lazarus. We also remember that, and this is where Jesus went. When it says Jesus went to Hades, he went to paradise. The thief on the cross, Jesus said, today you'll be with me in paradise. That weren't going to heaven. You know, a lot of people don't understand that. They went to Hades. Jesus wasn't going to the torment side to be tormented by demons like a lot of preachers say today. In fact, one of the most famous of these prosperity gospel preachers who are wrong in so many things, this is just one of them, that she says in her husky voice, if you don't believe that Jesus was tortured by demons in hell, then you're not really a Christian. Well, count me in that group. Anyway, so this is where Jesus was in paradise until the resurrection. And verse 26, and besides all this, between us and you, there is a great chasm fixed. In all these things, there's a great chasm. Actually, our word chasm comes from this word. It's cosma. And it means literally to yawn. To yawn there. A great chasm is between us, as it shows here. And it's fixed. What's it mean that it's fixed? Not changing, permanent. So that those who wish to come over from here to you will not be able, and that none may cross over from there to us. Augustine says, and the pity which he refused to show, he fails to obtain. He lacked the drop who denied the crumb. And it looks like we'll have to stop there. And we'll finish up this parable and the completion of the story, the main point of the story next time in our Bible study, and we'll then proceed into chapter 17 if there is time. All right, any final questions, comments? All right, have a Merry Christmas if I don't get to talk to you personally, and hopefully we'll see you here on Christmas Eve as well. I don't remember what he said, but it was something that was not what this guy said. I don't remember exactly now, but I thought I was surprised that he didn't know any better.
Girls doing the same clothing brand and all about cameras.
Bad enough that people here don't think it's important to come to Bible study, but to be in there making a lot of noise